Mystery of Mystery, a primer of Thelemic Ecclesiastical Gnosticism. Authors Sabazius X, USGL of OTO and Tau Helena. Copyright 2014 of the Common Era. Ordo Templi Orientis, USA. Grand Secretary General, P.O. Box 2313, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55311, www.oto-usa.org. Design and production by Conjoined Creations. P.O. Box 1172, Berkeley, California 94701, 1172. Part 4. Iglesia Gnostica Catholica in America. Chapter 1. The role and function of Thelemic clergy in Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, the Christian apostolic succession. The term apostolic succession derives from the Christian tradition that Jesus bestowed particular powers upon his apostles, which they were able to pass on to their successors. Ijazat. While still alive, he gave Peter the keys of the kingdom of heaven and the power to bind and to loose in heaven and on earth. Matthew 16, verses 18 through 19. At the resurrection, he bestowed the power to remit and retain sins upon the assembled apostles by breathing upon them and saying, "Receive ye the Holy Ghost." John 20, 22 through 23. The precise formula for conferral of the apostolic succession in the episcopate was established later. The essentials are the invocation of the Holy Spirit and the laying on of hands. Kairotonia. With right intent, after due preparation, in essence, after Christian baptism, confirmation, and ordination into the priesthood, the rite of exsufflation, or breathing upon the recipient, is also considered an integral component of the rite by some denominations. The apostolic succession is embodied in the episcopate of the Catholic, Anglican, and Orthodox churches, as well as within the wandering bishops' tradition, which includes the French Gnostic churches. According to St. Augustine, the powers conferred by a validly transmitted apostolic succession, in essence, the power to remit and retain sins, and to transmit the Holy Ghost, cannot be taken away once conferred. Even though the individual may lose his standing, recognition, and authority within the church. Even though the apostolic succession is embodied in the episcopate, the fact that one holds a validly transmitted apostolic succession does not automatically make one a bishop within any particular church. Episcopal power is derived from the apostolic succession, but episcopal authority is delegated by the leadership of the church. The ordination or consecration of a bishop may involve a perfectly valid conferral of the apostolic succession, but if it was performed without the authorization of the church leadership, it is illicit and conveys no authority in the church. Within the exoteric Christian community, the apostolic succession is considered to emanate from Jesus and the apostles. However, from an historical and anthropological perspective, its roots are much deeper. The book of Hebrews 5, 6, and 7 describes how Jesus was made a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek by God, in accordance with Psalm 110, and how this eternal order of priesthood was the foundation of spiritual authority for the apostles. The apostolic succession may then be considered to constitute the order of Melchizedekian priesthood. Who was Melchizedek, or Melchizedek? According to the sect of Melchizedekian Gnostics, he was an avatar of Seth, the third son of Adam. According to cultural anthropologists, he was probably an ancient Jebusite priest-king of the polytheistic Canaanite religion, which, being transplanted from Mesopotamia, had its deepest roots in Sumeria. So, this was the worship of the Anunnaki, with the high god Anu, who was still the high god, as his chief form of attention, and the other gods being gods or angels or other type of beings. Anu is what they're called, Anuki. Kabbalistically, Melchizedek, king of Salem, is the king of righteousness and peace, in essence, Jupiter, Chesed. In addition, as the heir to the patriarchal Hebrew tradition, the apostolic succession of Jesus would naturally have included the spiritual succession of Moses, who was, of course, an Egyptian initiate. Later, the apostolic succession acquired a series of additional spiritual successions through its relationship with Roman paganism. The early Roman ruler Numa Pompilius Salam, 716 to 673 before the Common Era, founded the College of Pontiffs to govern the pagan religion system or home god-based religious system of Rome. The president of this college was known as the Pontifex Maximus, Supreme Pontiff. On his accession as emperor, Octavian Augustus took this title for himself, and it was thereafter reserved for the emperor as formal head of the state religion. After the time of Christ, the idea of monotheism became more popular. The emperor El-Aga Ba'alus, 12, or we would say the Aga Khan today, 1218 to 218 to 222 of the Common Era, established the solar Baal worship of his native Syria as the imperial court within the Roman pagan milieu. This would have been Baal Marduk. Some say Mars, an otherwise well-known being who was worshipped here. The cult of El-Aga Belus was short-lived, or El-Aga Belus means the king of the gods, was short-lived, but the main feature, the henotheistic idea of all the diverse gods subordinate to a supreme solar deity, was resurrected by the Emperor Aurelian, or Aur Elian, so he's the angel of the place of Aur above Kether, 270 to 274 of the Common Era, and merged with the Mithraic religion as the imperial cult of the Deus Sol Invictus. Under this system, the emperor was considered the vice-regent, or the vice of the supreme god Sol Invictus, Caliph, who was also known by the name Mithra or Orions. The Sol, the various religions of the Roman Empire of the time, including Christianity. The system of Christianity was, in fact, very compatible with the system of Sol Invictus. There is a 3rd century vault mosaic in the tomb of Julie under St. Peter's, which depicts Christ as Sol, rising in his chariot, or Ra upon his barge. The Sol Invictus cult continued to grow under Aur El-Yan's successors and reached its pinnacle of success under the Emperor Constantine I the Great, who was emperor from 310 to 337 of the Common Era. May God be well pleased with him. Constantine and his mother. Constantine retained the title of Pontifex Maximus throughout his life, even through his deathbed baptism as a Christian. The Emperor Gratian, emperor from 367 to 387 of the Common Era, however, was converted relatively early in his life by St. Ambrose and renounced the title of Pontifex Maximus in 379 of the Common Era. There is no record, at least no record available to the public, of Gratian having appointed a successor to the office of Pontifex Maximus. However, though he renounced leadership of the state church hierarchy, he did not dissolve it. In that same year, the Bishop of Rome, Damasus I, Papacy 366 to 384 of the Common Era, referred to himself as Pontifex Maximus in petition to the emperor for judicial immunity. Damasus was a powerful and ambitious leader. He had won the office of the Roman episcopate by armed force, and he presided over a notoriously corrupt and sensuous church. He was a suave intellectual who moved easily among the pagan elites of Rome and converted many of them to Christianity. He was also the first of the bishops of Rome to assert Roman primacy over all other bishops, and as such was the first true pope. Appointment, even clandestine appointment, as supreme head of the Roman state church, which was ripe for Christian conversion, would have suited his purposes very well. On his baptism in 380 of the Common Era, Gratian's successor, Theodosius I the Great, Emperor of East 378 to 394, Emperor of East and West 394 to 395 of the Common Era, proclaimed the Christianity of Pope Damasus the official state religion of the Roman Empire. He then proceeded to issue a number of edicts which rendered the practice of pagan religions illegal. Pope Leo I the Great, Papacy 440 to 461 of the Common Era, publicly claimed the title of Pontifex Maximus for himself. Finally, under the papacy of Paul II, 1464 to 1471 of the Common Era, the title was made an official designation of the office of Pope. Authors such as Ragon, Hislop, Inman, Higgins, and Forlong have pointed out in detail the conspicuous similarities between the rites and symbols of Roman Catholic Christianity and those of its Roman predecessors, including the substitution of saints for gods, the replacement of the College of Pontiffs with the College of Cardinals, the replacement of the Pontifex Maximus with the Pope, and the celebration of Christ's birthday on December 25th, the birthday of Sol Invictus Mithra. It is often that a book will be patterned on another book. The titles kept the same, and even the book of Plato, called Critias, was a translation of an Egyptian manuscript brought over from Atlantis, which is now the United States of America. The gods' names were changed to be appropriate for the time, and the word saint in Arabic is wali, or uliya, the protecting friend. Not all the gods were protecting friends. Some of them were great enemies. So it's very important to say that this God was a saint, and this God is a demon. To distinguish between them, since the people had access to all of the information for themselves and were calling upon these saints and demons inconspicuously. So it's wonderful that the Roman Church clarified for us which of the gods, of the elite divine ones, as Pythagoras and Plato and others were called, were good, and which of them were harmful or used for harm. We may never know whether Pope Damasus I was actually appointed Pontifex Maximus of the Roman Church. Nonetheless, this mantle fell squarely upon his shoulders and those of his successors. Having either actually or effectively absorbed the Sol Invictus cult, the apostolic succession of the Roman Catholic Church has, since the time of Damasus, conveyed the spiritual succession of nearly all the pre-Christian pagan solar faiths of the Roman Empire. Thus, the apostolic succession, though considered within the exoteric Christian community to begin and end with Jesus, actually embodies the spiritual succession of the entire Western religious heritage, Christian, Judaic, and Hermetic. The Thelemic Gnostic succession. As Thelemites, we are little concerned with the exoteric Christian interpretation of apostolic succession. The power to remit and retain sins, which is the entire point of the Christian apostolic succession, is not particularly relevant to Thelemites. Therefore, it is not of critical importance for a bishop of the Thelemic EGC to hold a valid apostolic succession as defined by the canon law or exoteric Christianity. The spiritual succession we hold from the Master Therion, the prophet of the Aeons, a member of the Plymouth Brethren, who were the pilgrims who founded America, the founder of our religion, is of much greater significance to us. The Thelemic Gnostic succession, embodied in the membership of the MMM, conveys the power and authority to administer the outer institutions of the Thelemic religion, the OTO and the Gnostic Catholic Church, just as the Christian apostolic succession, which nominally begins with Jesus, actually conveys the spiritual heritage of many earlier traditions. So does our Thelemic Gnostic succession from the Master Therion convey all the various lineal successions of the constituent originating assemblies of the OTO, listed in Book 52, which were conferred upon Crowley by Theodore Roos when Crowley was made head of OTO for Ireland, Iona, and all of the Britons. One of these constituent originating assemblies was the Gnostic Catholic Church, which was originally Christian and whose episcopate conveyed the traditional apostolic succession through Joseph René Velate, one of the wandering bishops. Thus, our Thelemic Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica has united virtually all of the various spiritual successions of Western religious tradition in service to the law of Thelema. The Thelemic Gnostic succession embodied in the episcopate of our Gnostic Catholic Church can be considered in both a symbolic and a spiritual sense as a heritage of the primitive order of priesthood, as a transmission of the essence of all the saints of the true church of old time, whose mingled blood fills the cup of Babylon. Upon this succession, we may rightfully claim the heirship, communion, and benediction of those saints. Through the right use of this succession, we may build the invisible edifice of a spiritual ecclesia as we celebrate our Gnostic Mass. And by the power of the succession, we may once again awaken the egregore of the true church of old time upon the earth. So mote it be. Priesthood and Gnosis. One of the most commonly cited invariants of Gnosticism is the doctrine of personal illumination, that the salvific gnosis is obtained directly from the transcendent realm by each individual Gnostic. Some modern writers have gone so far as to opine that the violent opposition of the early Catholic Church against the Gnostics was a result of the refusal of the Gnostics to accept the concept of a mediatory priesthood. There were, of course, many other reasons besides this, but this idea had led some to question the value of an ecclesiastical hierarchy in the EGC. First, it should be pointed out that many classical Gnostic systems had ecclesiastical hierarchies. Most of the Alexandrian and Syrian Gnostic groups were centered around an authoritative teacher and his deputies. The Manichaean Church had an elaborate and very rigid hierarchical system composed of lay members, hearers, and a clergy elect who were governed by 360 elders, 72 bishops, 12 masters, and a single archegos, or chief. Second, while many of us tend to view the gnosis as a true unitive experience like samadhi, or the enlightenment of Zen Buddhism, or the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, many of the classic Gnostic systems viewed it simply as the personal conviction that one's own true nature was divine, and as such, that one dwelt in the material world as a stranger in a strange land, as a traveler whose ultimate goal was the transcendent pleroma. This belief could only bring salvation if it were truly a deep knowledge as opposed to a purely intellectual belief. It required the strength of what William James called the conversion experience. A Gnostic clergy would have been useful to those in pursuit of this experience as sources of theoretical and technical information, of spiritual guidance and reassurance to answer their questions, resolve their doubts, and help them through their studies and mediations and meditations to come ultimately to the full personal realization of the gnosis. The real distinction between the clergy of the Gnostic and Catholic Christian systems was that the Catholic priest actually took the part of Christ in intervening on behalf of the individual, whereas in the Gnostic Christian systems, the clergy assisted the individual toward accomplishing this for him or herself. The two systems had similarly divergent doctrines on the nature of Christ. The Catholics held and hold him to be the effector of world salvation through the principle of vicarious sacrifice, sympathetic magic. The Gnostics held him to be a divine illuminator, pointing the way toward salvation for those with the ability to see. Function of the EGC clergy. In the EGC, as in the Christian Gnostic systems, personal gnosis is stressed, so our clergy do not serve as intervening spiritually, or on behalf of the congregation, although they may, if they have the ability, serve somewhat in the same capacity as the classical Gnostic clergy, in essence, as teachers, facilitators, and counselors. The principal duty of the EGC clergy is to see that the rituals are rightly performed with joy and beauty. As such, they are the official representatives of the Church and the custodians of its paradigms. They are responsible for communicating the word of the Thelemic EGC to the world. In the Roman Catholic Church, there is no such thing as an incompetent priest in celebrating Mass. If he is duly ordained and says the words, the miracle is alleged to occur. It does not matter if he mumbles his lines. It does not matter if he mumbles his lines with his face buried in the missal, wears his chasuble backwards, and forgets to ring the bell. Such is not the case in the EGC, where the Catholic Mass is a miraculous rite, depending for its efficacy on the grace of God. The Gnostic Mass is a magical rite, depending for its efficacy on the knowledge, power, and talent of the celebrants. The effectiveness of the rite is directly proportional to the magical skill of the officers. The officers must, then, be magicians. They are technicians performing a complex technical procedure. They must therefore be educated in its theory and trained in its practice to be effective. The EGC clergy also serve a dramatic function as performers in a mystery play, whether they are presiding over the Gnostic Mass or a baptism or a wedding, or any other sacred rite. Their roles are those of specific divine forces, which are interior elements of each individual as well as forces of nature. As such, their function is to create a sympathetic magical response in the consciousness of those present. The effectiveness of this function is directly proportional to the dramatic ability of the officers. Another aspect of the function of the EGC clergy is social leadership. One of the basic functions of any religion is to define a community, and churches have always served the communal aspect of religion. The clergy of a church, whatever their other duties may be, must work to promote a sense of community and friendship among the members of the church. While the initiatory rites of the MMM and OTO are restricted to the members of certain degrees, the Gnostic Mass and most of the other rites of the EGC are open to all members, and in some cases even to non-members. The EGC thus serves as the social focal point of the Thelemic community, and its clergy are responsible for fostering harmony and fellowship. In summary, the clergy of the EGC must be thoroughly familiar with the official ceremony of the Gnostic Mass and must have a good general understanding of its theory. They must have a relatively clear conception of the basic doctrines of Thelema in general and of the OTO and EGC in particular, in accordance, of course, with their degree of initiation. They should be familiar with the theory and techniques of ceremonial magic and group dramatic ritual in particular. Ideally, they should also have a certain amount of aptitude for dramatic performance. They should understand teamwork. They should look good in robes, as Crowley put it, and they should be able to draw and hold the attention of those attending the ritual. They should, as visible leaders, be able to offer their services as facilitators to their congregations in the form of teaching and counseling. They should endeavor to create and maintain a sense of community within the congregation. They should understand the differences as well as the similarities between their roles as Thelemic clergy and those of the clergy of other religions. Finally, they should establish their link with the egregore of the Church through initiation, ordination, and regular celebration of the Gnostic Mass. May it return soon. References: Bejean, Michel, Richard Lay and Henry Lincoln, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Eliade Mircea, The Encyclopedia of Religion, Furlong, J.G.R., Faiths of Man, Furlong, J.G.R., Rivers of Life, London, 1883, Higgins Godfrey, Anagalipsis, An Attempt to Draw Aside the Veil of the Saitic Isis, or An Inquiry into the Origin of Languages, Nations and Religions, Longman, Green et al., London, 1836, reprinted by Health Research, Maculemne Hill, California, 1972, Halsberger, Gaston H., The Cult of Sol Invictus, E.G. Brill, Leiden, 1972, Hislop, Reverend Alexander, The Two Babylons, or The Papal Worship, Lois E. Brothers, New Jersey, 1916 to 1959, Inman Thomas, Ancient Pagan and Modern Christian Symbolism, 1869-1874, Kissinger Publications, Keela, Montana, 1993, James E.O., The Nature and Function of Priesthood, Barnes & Noble, New York, 1955. Le Forestier René, Le occultisme en France au 19e et 20e siècles, l'Église gnostique, ouvrage inédit publié par Antoine Favre, Archer, Milano, 1990. McDonald William J., Editor-in-Chief, New Catholic Encyclopedia, McGraw-Hill, New York, 1967. Rudolf Kurt Gnosis, Harper and Row, San Francisco, 1977. Welton, E.G., The Ancient Popes, The Newman Press, Westminster, Maryland, 1964.